Again, I just wanted to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Job Development, Building Skills to Connect with the Business Community. Next slide, please. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, and we're housed at Rutgers in the School of Health Professions in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is Kati, and I'm the project coordinator here at the center, and we'll be introducing our webinar presenter today. Our center is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health workforce and to deliver evidence-based and promising practices to individuals with mental health conditions. We also address the full continuum of services spanning mental illness prevention, treatment, recovery, and supports. If you're interested in staying up to date with the events and products the Northeast and Caribbean MHTTC is providing, we ask that you please sign up to receive our email communications. You can sign up by visiting the link that you see on the website. I'll share it also in the chat box for your convenience, and so you can stay up to date with the events and trainings that we're offering. Next slide, please. Following this webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey. We value your feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform our future activities. These surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to their completion. So we thank you in advance for your participation. We also just want to note that we will be recording the didactic portion of this webinar today, and we will pause the recording when we have a breakout session or if anyone is speaking about any personal matters, and we will make a note of when the pausing of the recording will happen. Next slide, please. At the time of this presentation, Marian Delphin Rittman served as Acting Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and don't reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS or SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. We encourage you today to interact with our presenter during the webinar by using the chat feature. Please post any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I'll collect the questions as we go and ask them of the presenter during the Q&A time toward the end of the presentation. Also, during this webinar, our presenter may pose questions to you, so please feel free to answer them using the chat. Also, we ask that you remain mindful that this is a webinar hosted on Zoom meeting format. Therefore, video and audio capabilities are available to you. And we just kindly ask that you remain mindful of video or audio during the didactic portion of the webinar. Next slide, please. We wanted to let you know about our 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and this is for people experiencing suicidal ideation, mental health substance use crisis, emotional distress, or if someone is concerned about a person in crisis. Please make a note of this resource, or you can also call the 988 to chat or text 988, or you can also chat online at 988lifeline.org. The MHTTC network is committed to using affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. Now let's begin our webinar. We have Joni Dolce with us today. Joni is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions at the Rutgers School of Health Professions. Joni has several years of experience working in behavioral healthcare settings, namely supported employment. Joni teaches courses in the department's undergraduate program, as well as providing training and technical assistance to behavioral healthcare providers. Her research interests include staff training and employment services, and she presents nationally on the topic of employment services and is listed as the Society of Human Resource Management recommended speaker on the topic of creating workplaces that support mental health. So again, welcome everyone, and I will turn it over to Joni.
Thank you so much, Kati. Welcome everyone. Before we get started, maybe we can have a quick check-in. It looks like we have a nice group of around 20 people, so not huge, but maybe a check-in. I always like to find out what drew you to today's webinar. What is it about today's topic that you're interested in learning more about? What was it about job development, specifically building relationships with employers, that drew you here today? You can use the chat or unmute your mic.
I can start. I'm Sunny Mishahi. I'm a job developer, employment specialist from Sonoma, California.
Hi, Sunny.
And
Welcome.
thank you. And as a job developer, as an employment specialist, uh, the learning never ends, and I have to keep myself updated. So thank you for having this, meeting today. It helps me a lot. Thank you.
Great. Welcome. It's always helpful to keep your skills updated and hear from others. How about other people on the call today? What was some of the reason why you were drawn to today's topic? Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll go. I just became a peer support counselor and a recovery coach, and I'm getting stuck on how to start up my own business and the right way to go about it. So that's what drew me here today.
Great. Welcome. So what we're going to cover today are, we're going to define what we are talking about when we refer to job development. We're going to look at the importance of introducing your employment services in a business-like and professional manner, looking at the elements of an elevator speech. So kind of using some business inspired work, marketing to help craft an introduction to employers and businesses, and then also do some practice, maybe practice some, or have an opportunity towards the end to practice our elevator speeches. We'll have to see as we get to that point, but some of the real learning happens during that practice. Katya, I don't know if there's anything in the chat. Looks like a few things came in.
Yes, Joni. So we have people sharing that they're looking for good resources to train employment specialists. We have someone that said they're interested in building relationships. They'd like to learn from different people and their techniques to grow their ability to better build relationships. And then working as an IPS employment specialist as a major part of their job is building connections with employers. So any help or training to do this is appreciated. We also have someone sharing learning how to build and sustain these relationships, looking for ways to connect them with business and other professionals. And I think that's the end of the comments.
Great, thank you so much. So since we have a smallish group, we certainly encourage discussion and encourage you to talk with others here on the call and maybe offer some support and suggestions, or use the opportunity to kind of hear what others are doing. It looks like from the registration that we have people from all over. We just heard from Sunny from California, and we have people from Georgia and certainly New Jersey, New York. So we're going to get started and just kind of get us all on the same page of our definition of job development. What we're referring to here is initiating and maintaining relationships, kind of personal relationships with a variety of different businesses and industry representatives. We want to look at and help to assess what the employer's business needs are, and make a good job match between what businesses are looking for and what job seekers' skills and interests and other characteristics, how we can help match the two. Job development is that skill, and I speak from experience. I've worked in employment services for a number of years. My main job when I was practicing was an employment specialist, so I did a lot of job development. And it's, the simple fact is it's difficult at times, and it can be very labor intensive. And there have been previous studies that looked at, there might be over 1,200 job leads, that those job leads can lead to 188 job interviews, and the result might only be 27 job offers. So it's time intensive. However, the benefits of assisting individuals that you're working with in getting out there and building relationships in the community are, there are a number of benefits. One is you're kind of getting a sense of what the business community is looking for. You're able to sort of possibly open the door to opportunities for individuals who may not have worked for a number of years, or people who may have gaps in their work history. Going out there and building those relationships can help provide more opportunities. And that's one of the areas job development has been shown to really positively impact the number of jobs that people with mental health conditions and other disabilities are achieving. Job development works. Maybe I can kind of touch base really quickly here again to kind of get your feedback. What is it about being an employment specialist, a vocational specialist, maybe you work in housing, or maybe you're the voc specialist on PACT, but I'm assuming most of you are doing some sort of vocationally related work if you're on the call. What are your thoughts about job development? What are your feelings about meeting with employers and kind of going out there in the business community? It's a very unique position in service provision. What are some of the thoughts that maybe you have here on the call? You can use the chat or unmute your mic.
For me, because I do work with the mental health patients, it is sometimes very difficult. I don't know how to do the job development without sharing the condition of my client.
I see. So it
So
seems like the disclosure or managing personal information is how we like to refer to, going out there and meeting with employers without divulging too much information is something, Sunny, that you find difficult at times. Absolutely. I think that's a common challenge that many employment specialists and job developers share. I don't know if there's anything in the chat.
As someone shared, I definitely agree that it is time intensive. It feels good when you do make a good connection, but
It does.
where it is a good connection is difficult. Also, it's nerve-wracking. And then someone is agreeing with Sunny's statement.
Job development is that area I mentioned that many employment specialists find most stressful and most difficult, because it's a little bit different than what we went to school for, possibly, or what our main job, is to provide counseling and support to individuals. Meeting with employers is a little bit outside of that. But like someone just mentioned in the chat, getting that lead, or landing that interview, or making that connection with employer feels so good. I remember that feeling when an employer would say, oh yes, you can come back next week, we can talk more about it. Even if it never landed a job, just the thought of having an opportunity to follow up with the employer. And that's kind of what we're going to do today, is talk about how to develop and initiate those relationships, and talk a little bit in our brief time here about how to continue those relationships with employers. But just as we're kind of talking about meeting with employers and meeting with businesses, essentially that's networking. We're kind of networking on behalf of individuals we're working with. We're certainly preparing individuals, job seekers, to do their own networking. So just a quick little survey here. What do you think the percentage of people is that who get jobs through networking. You can use the chat or unmute your mic. This was a survey conducted by LinkedIn. It just reinforces, maybe I'm giving it away, but reinforces the importance of developing a network and building that network and continuing to nurture that network of employers. Anything in the chat so far?
The people are sharing that they're looking at 85% as the majority of the answers. Someone said 55, someone said 70%, 75.
It's 85% of people, 85% is the percentage of people getting jobs through networking. So it's a very big percentage. Think about your own job and how that happened. Was it through some sort of networking? Was it through, traditional ways like sending in multiple cover letters and applications and resumes? So think about that. And I kind of preface this whole training around networking because that's really essentially what we're doing when we're building these networks. So I'm going to pose this question to you. And I'm posing this question because I want you to begin thinking about, and maybe many of you are thinking this way already, and this reinforces that, but when we talk about job development, when we go back to that original slide that we defined it, we're not talking about going in and asking if an employer is hiring. We're not just sending out applications and resumes through Indeed or Monster. It really is building that relationship with employers and maintaining that ongoing personal relationship. So if you think about job development in that way, this question here, what are the benefits to building relationships with employers? What do you think the benefits are? You can use the chat or unmute or just.
I think benefit of building relationship with employers are a key to our job, because when that relationship is built, they have it back in their mind that there is someone who has, group of people who's looking for a job, and this is perfect for them, and that's just take them a call, and it is a great relationship if
Absolutely. So building that relationship can translate to employers then maybe thinking of you and thinking of the services that you provide and maybe giving you a call when they might have openings. What are some other benefits to building relationships with employers? Looks like there might be a couple of chat responses.
Sure. They are mentioning rapport, trust, knowing what can help us both. Learning what employers think are the ideal skills an employee may need to have.
So building trust, a better understanding of what skills employers are looking for to help with that job match, right? Because above all of this is really, all of this is guided by the job seeker's goals, the job seeker's interest, what the job seeker wants to do. You might develop relationships with employers and be so happy about that relationship, which is awesome. But if there's not a job seeker to fill that, then we want to make sure it's a good job match. So those relationships we're building with employers help us to better understand the work culture, help us to better understand employers' expectations, so that we can help individuals we're working with identify opportunities out there that are matching their skills and interests and values. Everything is individualized, I guess, is kind of the bottom line point. we might be developing these relationships, and maybe those relationship that employer, we might not, you know, we might not have a person that could fill that particular need. So we want to be very mindful that everything is done individualized. Anything else in the chat, Kati?
Yes, someone mentioned it gets our IPS program out into the community
Mhm.
and find out more about the environments that people will be working within and learning about an employer's need prior to presenting them with a potential candidate.
Absolutely. So very few, I don't think any of those responses said anything about, you know, just finding job leads. Most of those responses were around getting a better understanding of the culture and the environment and what the employer's expectations are. Absolutely. So we're going to kind of get into some of the specifics about how to build your employer network. We're going to talk about each of these areas in detail, kind of give you some suggestions and some strategies for each of these, but we're going to talk about going local, you know, how to, in your own local area, build the relationships. What are some ways to do that? Looking the part. You know, that's probably not something that needs to be, you know, stated overtly, but it is something for us to be mindful of. And I don't know about you, but I know with COVID and kind of working from home and remotely, you know, it takes a little more effort to kind of present that professional appearance and demeanor. So it's always something to be aware of, being active. We'll talk about what we mean by that, the research around kind of building that employer network, having that really in you know, in-depth knowledge of what job seekers' goals are, so that you're kind of reaching out to employers that match what job seekers are interested in pursuing, and then using social media. And we'll talk a little bit about what types of social media might be most effective. And it's probably, you're probably all kind of connected with those social media anyway, but we'll go into that a little bit more. So going local, one way to build your network is connecting with local businesses. You might be able to find employers through maybe the Rotary Club or Chamber of Commerce in your area. Human resources groups like the Society for Human Resource Management, they have local or regional business or, you know, membership groups. Other labor or local business organizations, many of these offer monthly networking events designed for businesses to learn more about each other. And they present a really excellent opportunity for your employment service. So many of you work within organizations and probably work in different employment services or vocational services under those organizations or an IPS program model. It gives your specific employment service an opportunity to kind of be recognized by other businesses as part of the business community. Other businesses will see you and see your service as professional and one of potential value when you take advantage of some of these networking events or other business-to-business events. So what are some ways in your own specific communities that you can build relationships with employers? What are ways that you currently build relationships with local employers? What are ways that you can think of? Use some time today to think of those ways. You can use the chat or unmute your mic.
I just the other week I went to downtown Santa Rosa and I start going to each of the restaurants and coffee shop, flower shop. Every business is in there, and just, you know, introduce myself and have a little chat. It
Mhm.
wasn't like I'm a job developer. I have a client who needs a job. I didn't say anything. I just gave them my business card and I just said hi.
Yes.
And
That's excellent.
I hope the next time when I'm there for a client, then they remember me, and it wouldn't be so awkward.
Yeah, you're building that local network. You're reaching out to local establishments, coffee shops, restaurants, places that you might frequent. Also connecting with some of the business professional organizations. Is anyone currently connected with or plans to connect with the local Chamber of Commerce in your area or other business to business networking organizations or events?
We have a comment in the chat, one with local employers, an intro by other employers, job fairs, governmental agency fairs as well.
So job fairs. And I love the way that you're framing job fair as a way to build relationships with employers, because I think that's exactly the perfect way to use job fairs, is to get a sense of what employers are in the area. Certainly for job seekers, using job fairs has another value, and helping to support job seekers in kind of using job fairs for their own job search. But I think as job developers and employment consultants, having that opportunity to just get a chance to see what employers are out there. Sunny mentioned introducing yourself, sending giving the employer their card, and not necessarily looking for jobs or asking if they were hiring. That's a way for you to potentially turn a cold call into a warm call. Sunny can then go back and say, yes, I was here, a couple weeks ago, we chatted a little bit. Now it becomes less of a cold call and more of maybe some warmth to it. Maybe the employer recognizes Sunny and recognizes that they had some discussion. So, certainly cold calling isn't the ideal, but it is a way, like Sunny mentioned, to get your foot in the door and to at least, drop off the card, get the name of an employer with jobs that job seekers are interested in, and just kind of build that relationship. That's one step to building it. Here are some resources. You can check these out after the webinar today, but Society for Human Resources, they have on this website all of their regional and local chapters. You can kind of dig into those a little bit to see if there's anything near you that maybe they might have free or low cost events that you can attend. Another advantage of linking up with business organizations like SHRM or other businesses like the Chamber of Commerce is you can then start building an employer advisory, if you will. You can start building resources. So maybe you have questions, or job seekers have questions about those personality exams or tests that they give. Maybe a representative from SHRM might be able to meet with your team or individuals that you're working with and kind of orient you and them to, what's the rationale, what's the reasoning for these types of questions, how do I best respond. So you're kind of building that relationship for job opportunities, but you're also building it for maybe resources and other types of support. The labor market contact list, so each state has different labor market contacts, and they can provide some resources and information on labor market trends and projections and so on. It's interesting, just popping on there and checking it out. And then of course, the US Chamber of Commerce has the listing of all the different chambers of commerce. When I was providing employment consultation and working in a supported employment program many years ago, we belonged to the Chamber of Commerce for that particular town we were in. And every month they had like a morning breakfast, a networking event, and you kind of walked around, you wore like a name tag, met people, and it was just a way to, again, maybe turn what otherwise would be a cold call. Maybe if I actually went to those employers and just, knocked on their door or called, into now a warm call. Oh, we met at the chamber breakfast, and they see you as part of their community. And I know that budgets are certainly tight, and there's probably not a ton to spend, but if there is any sort of budget for your SC program or your vocational services, one way to use that might be a membership to the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe your organization already has a membership. But believe it or not, those were really productive and useful events to just see what was out there and just start talking with people and networking. We saw 85% of people typically get jobs through networking. Any questions or comments about using some of these resources, or maybe someone can chime in on whether or not they've used or have attended chamber events and any of the benefits that they might have received from utilizing any of these business to business organizations or attending any of the events. You can just unmute or write it in the chat. Or maybe another question might be a follow-up. How might your organization or your specific program or service use some of these business to business organizations?
Actually, I never used the Chamber of Commerce before. I like to learn more about them. I'm gonna search right after this meeting, but
Great.
I really need to learn more about that. I think I'm not sure why I never try to register or with them. I have to register, right? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, go on the website and see for your local area, and also maybe talk to your administrator. Maybe there's an existing membership. Maybe your organization already is a member, and maybe if no one is consistently going, maybe you can take advantage of their spot or the opportunity to go to some of these events. And maybe some of the events are held remotely now after we're kind of used to a remote world. But thank you, Sunny. Anyone else have an opportunity to use the chamber or attend some of those events? Or maybe there's something not here that you have used?
Someone in the chat shared, I think it would be very beneficial to rub elbows with the local Chamber of Commerce, and they're all for getting more connection.
Absolutely. I'd be curious if we do a follow-up training to see if anyone had an opportunity to reach out and how it went. So again, looking the part, just a reminder to present yourself and your services professionally and in the most business-like manner. Of course, our clothing should be neat, and if you're unsure, how to match what the employer's dress code is, maybe it's always better to err on the side of maybe more formal than casual. Maybe you have, a day or two a week that you spend out in the community, whether it's attending some of the networking events or what Sunny had mentioned, maybe, making those initial cold calls or initial introductions to employers, so that you can turn those into a warm call. Carrying something to take notes, whether it's an iPad or a pad, having a calendar ready. Business cards and other marketing materials should also be business-like and professional. So that kind of gets us into looking at our image. And when we're out meeting with employers and making our initial introductions and developing those relationships, what is the message that you want to communicate to an employer? So maybe you can use the chat, or a couple people want to raise their hands or unmute. Think about what message do you want to communicate? And we walk through this image planning exercise to really have us think, how can we present ourselves in a way that businesses see us as very similar to them? There's a risk when you are going out and you're presenting your service in a way that is, using terminology that is reflective of behavioral health services or working with people, with disabilities. The employer might immediately shut off because the employer may not understand or have much knowledge about individuals working with disabilities or mental health conditions. Anything in the chat, Kati? It looks like I saw a couple of things.
Yes, someone also shared here webinars also work, being professional and honest. The libraries are also good to check out, and bulletin boards are still a thing, offering transparency. And they're also asking, what is an example of the elevator pitch you use in this case?
We're going to get to the elevator pitch. We have a whole section on that. So we will definitely get to, but the message people want to communicate, I heard being honest, transparent, professional. Sunny, you have your hand raised?
Yes. A message I want to communicate to is my goal is to find a job for a client who has lower chances of finding a job and working because of their mental health. I don't want to call it limitation, but the condition. And I want to communicate that need to them, that they are helping their community to do better. People who are in need, they are helping these businesses, helping them to do better, to have a part-time job and be an active member of the community. They are, and the businesses as a part of community are there, to help too. So that's what I try to communicate with them, not, only a job development, but it's a community action to help and take care of the members that are vulnerable.
Thank you for providing that information. May I offer another way of looking at that? Is not necessarily people who are vulnerable, that the employers helping out a specific group of people, but if we are really spending the time developing a good job match, and we know that the person's skills and interests and values match what the employer is looking for, it really is about partnering with the employer around employment and finding and helping the employer to identify people within their community, regardless of disability or mental health condition, but people in their community who are actively looking for work. We want to convey the message that we're there to help them find those individuals, find people. We don't want the employer to think that there's any sort of charitable reason they should be doing it. We want the employer to see the great benefits of using our service. And we're going to talk about, that's kind of what this image planning activity is for, is really to highlight those unique skills that you have as an employment specialist. One of those skills is the fact that you spend so much time getting to know the job seeker and understanding what the job seeker's interests and wants are, and goals. It looks like there might be something in the chat.
Yes. So someone also shared an image, trying to, oh, the bulletin boards that they shared in the image. Thank you so much for sharing. They'd like to showcase that we're offering a service just like the employer offers a service, and try to avoid that using that they're affiliated with a particular organization because there's still a stigma around those services.
Yes.
Sometimes if someone local hears about that organization, they think that they think of people living with developmental disabilities, which our program actually works with people living with serious mental health illness. They're assisting individuals with seeking employment and have a person who is qualified for you available.
Absolutely. So it's collaborating, really showcasing. I love that showcase that we are offering a service just like the employer offers a service. Yes, I love that bulletin board. So that's the message. The message is this partnership. You know, we're all in this community together, whether it's a small town, whether it's an urban area, whether it's, you know, suburban, whatever it might be, but we're all kind of part of this community. And how can we partner with one another to make the community thrive? And part of that is, you know, through employment, through career advancement. And I love what everyone had mentioned, including you, Sunny, that, you know, it really is conveying that message of professionalism. We're a business just like you, and we have some good skills and we have some great resources that we can provide. So you want to kind of stay away from images or symbols that suggest any sort of, you know, charity. We don't want to come across as, you know, the employer's doing this solely to help the client out, solely to help the individual. The individual has a lot to offer, as does your employment service. So we want to avoid using those types of jargon or symbol. So, you know, this image planning activity, this is something that you can kind of take back with you, maybe work with your team. It could be a team building or something that you do in a team meeting, and really sort of like brainstorm about the types of messages and what keywords and what images. And then finally, if you can think about, I don't know if anyone has a doing business as name, so maybe a different name than their parent organization. So maybe the parent organization you work for has the term mental health or behavioral health or disability in it. Maybe there's a way you can speak with your supervisor or other administration to see if there's a way that you can kind of go under a name that isn't quite so obvious and blatant. And that's certainly not to be sneaky or to somehow like disclose information. It really is a way to protect individuals' confidentiality, right? So if you go into a business and you automatically let the employer know that you're working with an agency, you know, ABC Behavioral Healthcare Organization or ABC Community Mental Health Center or whatever it might be, you know, you're automatically, unfortunately, setting someone up for potential stigma and possible discrimination. So, you know, think about if there's a way for you to talk with your supervisor, others in your agency, if there's a way to go by maybe a different name. Again, not to be sneaky or somehow be covert with an employer, but really to protect the person's confidentiality. And then certainly if the job seeker or the employee decides to disclose and what type of personal information they decide to manage is up to them. And you can certainly support them in that and the timing, you know, when that makes the most sense in terms of protection. But just in terms of the image planning, think about ways that you might be able to present your service. Kind of moving into the being active, it kind of goes with the being local and being out there in the business community, and it talks about, you know, ways that you might be able to, if possible, volunteer your time, supporting local business organizations. Maybe there are different events or other committees. I'm thinking like some of the local, you know, SHRM meetings or other employer and business organizations. Maybe there are ways that they would want to use your skills. Maybe you have skills, or your service, your employment service has some skills that could be helpful. Maybe, you know, the job match, or you know, DEI, maybe there's a DEI, a diversity, equity, and inclusion type of committee that you can lend some support to. And, you know, certainly you would want to negotiate that with your employer if volunteering is something that you can't do. Maybe you talk with your employer about that. But again, it's a way to strengthen and build those relationships. So it's not necessarily just volunteering. It could be other ways too. You know, sitting on a board of an organization or professional group, doing the research, keeping updated regarding new market trends and business trends and projections. The next page has quite a few resources of the different trends websites that you can look at, different trends and projections, and you can find information on the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics websites on the next slide. But being knowledgeable about what's coming into your local area not only helps you maintain familiarity with the current market, but it also helps you to see what's coming in the future. You know, what are they building? What recently near me here in southern New Jersey, they built a very large hospital that, you know, covered one large town and many other satellite offices. So that was an opportunity if you were working with job seekers who were interested in working in the medical field somehow, being kind of aware that that was happening and they were building this hospital system. You could kind of get in early on and sort of network with the human resource department, network with the person who does the hiring, and begin that relationship building early on. Some ways, here are just some websites that you can access after the webinar today to keep up with some of the trends and projections. Very user-friendly, kind of click in and it'll give you some information of where to look. And then looking and knowing the job seeker's goals and making the match is such a critical piece of building that relationship. Because has anyone ever been in a situation, I'll raise my hand first, where you thought it was a great match, the person had the skills, seemed to have the interest, and the person worked for maybe just a couple of days and just left without really telling the employer? And then as you dig a little bit deeper, I realized, you know, as I started talking to this person, it was a person I was working with, they were very involved with a local, like a self-help center, wellness center, and they were really had some leadership roles there, and their job interfered with that. Had we had that discussion earlier, we probably, you know, they probably would have chosen a different occupation or different job. So I guess the point is knowing the job seeker, really getting to know and understand what the person's skills and interests, abilities, and goals are. That person's goal ultimately was to become a facilitator, group facilitator, peer provider. You know, and had we had those more in-depth conversations, it would have been pretty obvious that it wasn't a good job match. And sadly, what happened, I was involved with the job development of that with that employer, and it really didn't look well. It looked great. It looked pretty bad. The employer wasn't very happy, and it took some time to build that relationship back up, which we did because it, that honesty and transparency was there. That was all there. So the employer, took some time, but being honest and transparent was very helpful. So we want to become familiar with the needs of job seekers. We also want to better understand the work culture, right? So what's the work culture like? What are the tasks that are needed to be performed on the job? What skills are required for the job? What's the physical environment like? I think I have a slide coming up with some features of work culture that kind of helps you kind of frame what you're looking for when you're assessing a company's work culture, namely leadership and how people communicate with one another and so on. So we're really targeting employers that match the job goals and interests of individuals we're working with. So using social media, anyone here use any type of social media currently in their job development or building relationships with employers? And how are you currently using any type of social media?
The hand raised by Lauren.
Yes.
And we have someone in the chat shared LinkedIn.
Hi, I put my hand up by accident. I wanted to comment earlier, but right now I'm just listening. Thank you, though. I don't know how to put my hand down.
That's okay. We'll ignore it, Lauren. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes.
LinkedIn.
Hi. Good. Hi.
Hi,
Good
Mary.
afternoon.
Yes.
Sometimes I see like on Facebook and you have to go in there and actually check just to make sure they're real opportunities. Sometimes Facebook will post job opportunities. Like once I saw where there was this cleaning position, janitorial position, and it said that they were looking for a certain amount of employees, and it said that you could go ahead and submit your application, at the bottom. And sometimes I've seen that different job opportunities via Facebook, and I'll sometimes, kind of like just check it out first before I actually relay it to my consumers, because sometimes they're not real job opportunities.
Yeah, check it out. Make sure it's legit. Make sure it's real. Also, Mary, a way, if once you find out it's real and legitimate, you can maybe dig a little deeper, and maybe you could develop some relationship with that person. And hey, I saw your post on Facebook. I work with a service, an employment service, and we help connect job seekers with local employers. And I just saw your Facebook post, wondering if you had some time over the next couple of weeks to maybe talk about a little bit what you're looking for and what some of your current or future needs might be. That's an opportunity to build a relationship too.
Exactly.
Using social media, you might have your own personal LinkedIn accounts or your personal Facebook accounts. Sounds like, Mary, that was probably more on your personal side, but you're kind of always a job developer, right? We're always looking and trying to make that match. But if possible, maybe there's a way that your program could have maybe a designated LinkedIn, or maybe there's a way that you could somehow use your LinkedIn through your employment service, not necessarily just your personal LinkedIn account. So for example, you could be building relationships with employers through your own.
Oh, okay. Yes, I understand. Yes.
Yeah, so you might be able to build those relationships as your employment service. So
Right.
Mary, what organization are you with, or what's your employment service called?
It's MBI,
Okay.
MBIHS, yes.
Okay, so kind of innocuous, not MBI
Right,
could
right.
be business, and if you created a LinkedIn or other account, maybe through that, if
Mhm.
talk to your supervisor and your administrators, maybe there's a way that you could then follow companies. So I follow for these types of trainings, I follow certain
Mhm.
employers and businesses just to kind of
Right.
describe what that process is. So I follow that large hospital system that I was talking about. So I go on there and I can, I typed in the company's name in the search field, it's virtual
Mhm.
health, clicked follow, and then I now get all of virtual health
Mhm.
information. I can see when they have different walks and different events, and I can see when they have um, job openings. So it's a way to, again, build that network. And ideally, it would be great if you could do it through your service, your employment
Okay.
service,
Mhm.
but if you could certainly do it through your personal account too, and you want to, follow people who are hiring managers or the HR professionals in that company. And again, they provide a lot of information about stuff that they're doing that's not necessarily just job postings, but the virtual hospital that I'm talking about, health service, they send out lots of information about we're, hosting a walk this week, or we're hosting a 5K. And again, going back to some of those earlier slides about going local and being active, those are ways that you can connect in a very organic way with employers. Anything in the chat before we move on?
Yes, we have a couple of comments in the chat. Someone shared, didn't think of using social media. I wouldn't want to make a separate, I want to make a separate account or something just for the sake of keeping work life and personal life separate. Also, someone mentioned, I've only used LinkedIn. It's a great tool. Part of LinkedIn is in order for clients to follow up with employers and their network, that usually means you need premium. But it can be a great way to find jobs. And yes, by following employers is great. And someone is also sharing that they're waiting for their LLC for the recovery coaching and peer support.
Okay. Great. So, we're talking about social media today, really around job development, your activities, your job development. But yes, help individuals, assist individuals that you're working with, job seekers, in getting their own LinkedIn and encouraging activity. You don't want someone to create a LinkedIn account and never ever go on it and have no picture, or have it look really like just flat and no activity. So if someone's really committed to building a LinkedIn account, teaching them and providing that coaching around what they really need to do to keep that active and have it look viable and good. But in terms of job development, this is also a way for us as job developers, as employment specialists, to build those relationships with employers. Using Twitter, again, ways to learn about the company and practice your introduction, which we're going to get into, I promise, in just a bit. We're going to develop that elevator speech introduction. You can follow companies' hiring managers. Again, it's just another way to keep up on kind of the local trends and what companies are doing, particularly if these are companies local to you. Again, you could then send an email to an employer that maybe you've been following on Twitter and say, oh, I saw that your company is expanding. Let me introduce myself. I work with an employment service here in the local area, and then you can kind of describe a little bit about what you do and use that introduction we're going to create. But again, it's a cold call, but a little bit warm, because you're kind of referring to something that you saw, and the employer might think that there's a little bit more of a relationship or connection there. So again, just another way of using social media. And this I just added, and I don't know how feasible, but it could be something that could really grow your service and your program, but you might be able to do some podcasts, or, blogging might be not as common now, but certainly podcasts. And, you could have some, or newsletters, or maybe even a website, or, something that highlights your skills as as employment specialists. What are the skills that your service can provide, and you can, again, it might be a reach goal to think that you're going to have a podcast, but maybe not. Maybe that's something that, there's a new way of that, maybe you come back from this webinar thinking, oh, maybe there's some new things that I could try, and maybe this is something to really connect with the employment community. If that's not possible, maybe commenting on other people's podcasts or websites, or, LinkedIn, making comments, and that, again, people see you in a professional way, an expert in certain things, particularly if you're commenting on areas that employers would find particularly helpful. Maybe you're commenting on things that are relevant, like accommodations and so on. Sunny, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, these are great ideas. I never thought about a blogging or a website or podcast. I never thought about that, but this is something I want to search more about and learn more about how, it,
Yeah, it's a way to you want the idea behind this is, as an employment specialist, as someone, working in employment services, you want to highlight your skills and expertise, and you want employers to really look at you in a way like, wow, they can offer my company something. They have something to offer. So
yes,
great,
yes,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Anything, it looks like there might be something here in the chat. Getting a table at a bazaar community center. Yes, I think that's a great suggestion, Amberly, depending on where you live, and if that's something that's readily available. Yes, have that table, and be able, maybe offer some suggestions on how, you might be able to. I'm thinking off the top of my head, but maybe, you have skills in communication techniques, and you could offer to the employer, workshops maybe to their employees on effective communication. Underneath all of this, many of you are counselors and have those communication skills. So just some ways to think about job development in a different way, not just, are you hiring? No. Here's, fill out the application online, blah, blah, check all these boxes. Just some ways to consider another approach. So this is just sort of kind of like an overview of the types of interactions and the goal of the interactions when you're out there meeting with individuals. Today's 90-minute webinar, we're really just getting to that first, introducing yourself. But we have others coming up, and we can certainly, if people are interested, arrange to have additional webinars on this topic to build on some of these other areas. But each interaction with an employer should have a purpose or an intent. So when you're preparing for each visit, it's important to identify that goal for yourself, and so that the employer, so that you can be best prepared to meet with that employer. Knowing that your intent for the day is to go introduce yourself to employers, you kind of know then what the goal is. So you builds up that confidence. You'll have the necessary materials that you need. You'll have prepared some tough, responses to maybe tough questions an employer might have. So, think about that. The initial visit, that introducing yourself, you want to have your elevator speech sort of worked out and really kind of flow off your tongue. And then the second visit, gaining a better understanding of the employer's needs. This might be when the employer wants you to come back. Maybe you introduce yourself and you say something like, I know that now might not be the best time for you to meet with me. However, if you do have some time, that would be great. But I'd love to follow up with you next week or the week after, and talk a little bit further about some of what your needs might be and some of what your your current employer, your current setting right now is, what some of your employer needs are, employee needs. So kind of that second job development interaction. And these are just some questions to prompt some discussions during that kind of second visit, I guess, getting a better understanding of what employers needs. And then maybe you're going and assessing the work culture. And then the next slide, I have some areas to look for. Maybe you're there to arrange the interview for someone. Maybe you've introduced yourself, you got back for that second visit, you got a better understanding of what the employer's needs are. It's a good match. The work culture is a good fit. And now you're at the point where you went back to the job seeker and the job seeker said, yes, this sounds perfect. I'd love an interview. So now you're in that stage of helping to arrange the interview. So you've, kind of talked to the job seeker about what their disclosure preferences are, how much information they want you to share about their disability or limitations, if you will, or the functional implications of their mental health condition. And then the following up piece is important too. But again, we're really focusing on that top area of the introduction. And these are just, and we can, and be on the lookout for future webinars on how to assess work culture. We do an entire webinar on assessing work culture for disability, equity, and inclusion practices. But some of those areas you want to look for are the leadership. How are the leaders? Is there a hierarchy? Is there, are there formal leaders, informal leaders? What's the management like? Workplace practices, and so on. So I'm going to kind of move through that so we can get to our elevator speech. Does anyone use an elevator speech or have used one, whether professionally or personally? Looks like a couple people in the chat. So an elevator speech is kind of a brief synopsis, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute tops, of the service that you provide and the purpose of your visit. And we're kind of looking at it today, used when introducing yourself and services to employers. It's really used to pique an employer's interest because it gives a quick overview of why they should work with you or meet with you to further discuss. It's often used when networking or making that initial contact with a potential employer. After you say your elevator speech, you can hand out a business card if you have one, or other literature if you have that. So we're going to look a little bit and see the ingredients of an elevator speech. So you want to introduce yourself, your name, organization, and again, following back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, maybe you have, another doing business as type name that you go under with your organization. Again, not to be sneaky or covert in any way, but just to minimize that initial stigma and potential discrimination. So introduce yourself and your organization. I'll just use an example of when I was providing services. Hello, my name is Joni Dolce. I'm with the Integrated Employment Institute, Employment Services, and then identify a problem or a concern that the employer has. Finding reliable employees can be time consuming, and expensive. So an employer, you want to kind of touch on and hit a nerve with the employer, what problem they might be having. Describe how I can solve that problem or potentially solve that problem. IEI Employment Services assist employers with finding qualified job applicants. We take the time to speak with employers to identify their needs so that we can make a good match with them and job candidates, and then offer a benefit to the employer. Employers can save time and money in the recruitment process. So if I'll put that all together so that you can hear how it sounds, but it's really these basic ingredients are really the crux of a good elevator speech when we're using it to introduce ourselves to employers. So, hi, my name is Joni Dolce. I'm with the Integrated Employment Institute's Employment Services. I know finding reliable, hard, good work ethic employees is time consuming and expensive for employers these days. IEI services we assist employers with identifying qualified job applicants. We take the time to speak with employers like you to identify your needs so that we can make a good job match with you and the job candidate. And in the long run, employers can save time and money in their recruitment process. So you kind of can see how it flows all together. Is anyone interested in checking it out, testing their own elevator speech? Maybe we'll get into some additional information that might be helpful as you're creating your elevator speeches. In the chat, Kati, is there anything that I want to highlight first?
Yes, someone is sharing, just for privacy reasons, I will not, I will change their name. We are recording. Their name is MR, and I'm an employment specialist with XYZ Industries. Their job is to help people find employment. However, I'm not looking for a job for anyone today. Another part of my job is to make connections with local employers to learn about their business and the people who tend to be successful. I want to be a resource for you by hooking you up with the perfect job fit. If you'd like, I would like to schedule a 15 to 20-minute appointment to come back and learn about your business.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Nice job. That's perfect. Has that been a successful approach? I'm looking at the speech that you just crafted in the chat here. Yes, I agree that it has to be very successful. I love how you mention I'm not looking for a job for anyone today. That immediately puts the employer at ease somewhat, right? So, I'm not looking for anyone today. Part of my job is to make these connections with local employers and learn about the business and the people who tend to be successful. So you're automatically putting that person at ease. And then I'd like to schedule a 15 to 20-minute appointment to come back and learn about your business. I love it. That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. Looking at professionalism and developing that professional persona, I think what you just wrote in the chat embodies a lot of that. There's that confidence. I'd like to schedule a 15 to 20-minute meeting to further discuss. You're not really asking permission to do that. You're really confidently asking to do that. You're using business versus human service language. I didn't hear anything about human service kind of jargon. You're respecting their time. I'm not here today to get into what you're hiring for or if you're hiring. And you're very professional and positive. I love it. And then if we think about the language we use, we want to be mindful of jargon. We want to make sure we're using language that reflects the business community, right? So we might say things like competitive employment. Well, an employer will just say work or job, or We might say consumer, client. We want to be mindful and use terms that are appropriate for a business setting, applicant, job candidate. We might say things like ongoing supports. Oh, we offer ongoing supports. Well, that might not resonate with an employer. That might not make sense, or employers may not understand in the business world what that means. That's long-term employee assistance. So we just want to be aware of the language that we use and not use jargon related to our human service or behavioral healthcare fields. So let's think about developing our own elevator speech. We can break up into a couple of different breakout sessions. We have about 15 minutes, a little bit less, and you can kind of work on developing your own elevator speech. And I'll broadcast this into the breakout session. So Kati, I don't know if we want to set those up. If you wanted to reach out with your elevator speech at a later date and I can review it and give some feedback, I'd be more than happy to do that. If no one cares to kind of join, say that, or it'll give you a chance to finish up. So please, you can get in touch with me at a later date. And we are at the summary slide. So thank you for all of the great interaction. We talked about the benefits of job development, particularly building those relationships. We talked about some of the ways that we can build those relationships, from going local, connecting with chambers and other business groups, to, making sure we're professionally presenting our service and ourselves, and then finally coming up with those introductions, or beginning to come up with those brief elevator speech introductions. So we appreciate all of your time. Here are some resources and references. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is here, and I think Kati put the evaluation information in the chat already. We appreciate any feedback for today, and let us know if you have topics that you're interested in the future, and we can try to address that need. But thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.